The Early Weigh-In podcast is back for UFC Vegas 28. Both the co-main and main event are a battle between ranked heavyweight contenders. But headlining the card, we got Jairzinho Rozenstruik taking on Augusto Sakai. We had a week off last week. I'm wearing the casual cap because, Shabazian decides to jump the guillotine and doesn't know what the hell a treadmill is. But I will wear this, every day of the week if it means we sweep the betting card, man.
Yeah, man. Clean sweeps and you rocking a casual cap, I'm all for it. No, but looking over last week's card, man, I was really happy with how we played it. No. I think it was mature of us to take Rob Font by straight up rather than trying to take him by KO or falling into that trap under that I know a lot of people were on earlier in the week. And then we saw two huge mismatches in Rothwell and Bruno Silva that we also just took the money line, put 3 units on the parlay, and then profited about 2.5 units. I can't complain with how we played it. It wasn't our most, we didn't bet the most units on that card by any means, but it was definitely one of the ones that I feel like we've learned from our mistakes and made improvements. And then lastly, we did a little sprinkle on that Rothwell finish, which hit with ease, man. I was really happy that we got to play that. And yeah, man, we've got an absolute banger of a card where we don't see a fight under 170 pounds on the main card, so you know that there's bound to be some fireworks. Yes. And we actually start in the 155-pound division where we see El Nino Claudio Puelles, who's 9-2, taking on the Monkey King Jordan Leavitt, who's 8-0. Claudio Puelles, yet another guy that's coming off a layoff that's getting Jordan Leavitt here. Puelles, he's coming out of Sanford MMA, and from what I've seen, he's more than comfortable trying to get the fight to the ground, which is not something that you really want to do with somebody like Jordan Leavitt, who, definitely has made a career off the ground game. Jordan Leavitt, definitely a character to say the least. He's training out of Syndicate MMA, which is a perfect fit for him. He's down to do the very feminine actions and some splits and give you a show, which is, I guess, something that the UFC can use. But at 26 years old, really, the sky's the limit for him. I think a lot of people were upset with him coming in at that minus 500 price tag against Matt Wyman, but he lived up to it, man. He lived up to it. That was his first ever career KO, but I can imagine him probably going back to that ground game and getting a relatively easy win here.
Yeah, man. With Puelles, layoff's kind of been the story of his UFC career. He debuts in 2016, been super inactive throughout the last 3 years, and in the debut, it's against Martin Bravo, who's a featherweight, who just goes out there and smokes this kid, man. He has Puelles' mouth breathing by round 2, finishes him with body shots, and really the only thing Puelles showed that night that was worth noting was the kind of the entry on the single leg that he has, and follows it up there with despite a win, another awful performance on his behalf against Felipe Silva, I believe it was. He's dominated from bell to bell and pulls the knee bar out of nowhere round 3. Obviously comeback of the year and stuff. Moves on with another win against Marcos Mariano and a dominant performance on his behalf, but man, if you can't finish Marcos Mariano, I think you got a problem. Puelles does offer a good body kick and stuff. You'll see him kind of switch stances a little bit, but he makes a living off that single leg entry. It's really the only thing I see good out of him, and the gas tank's kind of zapped pretty quick. With the side of Jordan Leavitt, yeah, you absolutely know how I feel about Syndicate MMA. There's definitely not a high ceiling for a lot of male athletes out of that gym. I think you just don't have the quality training partners and stuff there. He's still undefeated as a pro, as an amateur as well, and I just shit on him a little bit, but I love his patience. He's super, super smart in there, and you can tell he's an intelligent guy outside the octagon as well. And he uses that when he fights. He's sticks to the game plan, has good fight IQ. Look to just kind of, drag you to the mat, open you up with some ground and pound, and look for that submission. It's been relatively easy for him so far, and I like this matchup for him a lot here. I'm going to go with Jordan Leavitt, but, let it be known, man, I think this guy's first O is going to be taken relatively soon. Matt Wyman and Claudio Puelles just aren't the guys I can pull the trigger on.
And something else to note is I don't love Jordan Leavitt at minus 200. We have talked about using him in a parlay because we do think that he's got the edge here, but for me, and I know for you too, we do kind of see him as a sub or bust type of guy, and a lot of his fights are ending by submission, and that's sitting at plus 165 right now, which I think is much more appealing than trying to play Leavitt straight up, although we will most likely lay off this fight entirely.
For sure. The degenerate in me always loves action on the first fight, so probably going to be a little stab on that sub prop for Jordan Leavitt.
You might see it on the card, honestly.
In our second fight of the night, we see Youssef, the Moroccan Devil Zalal, who's 10-4, taking on Sean, the Sniper Woodson, who's 7-1. And currently they've got Zalal sitting at the plus 165 and Sean Woodson the minus 190. You see Youssef Zalal there training out of Factory X Muay Thai under head coach Mark Montoya, notorious for keeping his fighters in great shape. A lot of them taking, short notice calls all the time. And Sean Woodson training out of another good camp there in Gloria MMA with James Krause in his corner. Last time out, Sean Woodson's gas tank kind of failed him, late in that fight, come round 3 here. And Zalal, man, he's a cardio machine. When I break this down, I absolutely feel like Sean, he has the striking advantage without a doubt here. But this is a wide line in my opinion. And at plus 165, plus 170 where I got my Zalal price tag, I think there's a lot of value on him. He sneaks those takedowns in late in rounds, and I think he might steal a little split decision or a 29-28 taken maybe round 2 and 3, but I think maybe see it just a little different.
Yeah, I see it a little bit differently. I actually am on Woodson on this side, pretty heavy. At 6'2.5" inches, at 145, he's got to have the biggest frame in the division, right. Yeah. And he really utilizes that length well. I kind of compare him to Sean O'Malley, where he's constantly giving you looks. Mm-hmm. He went 46-3 as an amateur boxer, and it shows in there. He's so comfortable on the feet. And, like most tall guys in those lower weight classes, they have a couple problems. They give up their strength, and they have difficulty defending those takedowns because they just don't have the strength to keep them from getting their arms locked around them and getting it to the ground. They do a good job of working themselves up to the feet, which we saw Woodson do in that Rosa fight a couple times. But like I said, I think Zalal being able to get in on the hips of Woodson is where he's going to find success, and really the only way that I see he finds success. Zalal, in my opinion, is going to have the grappling edge here. And, we saw in that Ilir Tybura fight, although it was mostly defensive grappling from Zalal's slick on the ground. He knows what he's doing, and that's something that Woodson has struggled with in his past. I also think that Woodson is somewhat unproven. And this is a great spot, kind of a litmus test for him to kind of see if he can bounce back off that Julian Erosa loss. One big thing that I take from that Erosa loss is Sean Woodson hit him with everything but the kitchen sink in that fight. And Erosa walked through it. And mentally, that's got to suck for Woodson, to try and stay motivated and to have that energy throughout the fight whenever you can't finish the dude, even though you're giving him your best shots. I mean, that's got to be draining in and of itself. I think that Zalal early on might find success just being the faster fighter, but I think once Woodson kind of finds that range and finds the timing of Zalal, he'll eventually pick him apart. I think the line's probably where it should be, and to be honest with you, Woodson should have whooped Julian Erosa's ass, and every other fighter who takes that many shots goes down. It just so happened that he pulled somebody like Erosa who loves, spoiling people's parties, and it happened that way. I've got Woodson here pretty easily. I'm playing him for like a unit, I lean him. I think that the price tag's there, but it's not my most confident bet of the night by any means.
I really like what I see from Woodson on the feet as well with the boxing. It's super crisp. The guy, he doesn't telegraph or, load up on anything, and it's almost like Nate Diaz, just pops everything out there, just a lot of just peppers you 2-3 punch combinations, doesn't put a lot of power, just hopes that volume can put you away. But man, for Zalal, he's more defensively sound than the last couple of people we've seen Woodson fight combined there in Bochniak and Julian Erosa. I like that speed advantage. Huge advantage for Woodson on the feet here, but like I said, I think we see Zalal chop that leg down a little bit, work the body, and I think he steals it with these takedowns come late. But I don't mind disagreeing right off the bat. No,
I don't mind it at all. I got one more thing for Zalal. In his last fight against Seungwoo Choi, he's coming in as the minus 245 favorite. And I think both of us were on Choi. Yeah. So we actually faded him the right way. Zalal, I think that this fight could go extremely similar. You've got another guy who's over 6 foot that can work his way back to the feet multiple times like Choi. And it seemed like Choi, even though he's not as good of a striker as Woodson, still found success against Zalal on the feet, which is why I'm leaning towards Woodson. I think it'll be an absolute banger and honestly kind of a sleeper fight to be putting second on the card.
Absolutely, man.
Moving on, we go to the women's flyweight division where we see Preston's dark horse for most attractive female fighter in Maryna, the Iron Lady Moroz, taking on the beast Manon Fiorot. Maryna Moroz, training out of American Top Team, and for the last 5 years, she's kind of been one of those one fight a year type fighters, which I personally am never a huge fan of. She's been in the UFC long enough, though, to where you kind of know where she fits in. She's lost to the upper echelon of the division and beat the girls that she needs to kind of stay in there. With Manon Fiorot, one of the newer, more exciting flyweights in the division, and after watching tape study, probably the most athletically gifted one in the division as well. Sure. I know she made her debut against Victoria Leonardo, where we actually cashed on that TKO. It was plus 255 on a debuting fighter and a girl, and we cashed on it, man. Like, I was pretty happy with us there. Manon, she's training at a boxing squad, and her TKO's at plus 350 yet again, and man, that's super tempting for me. I'm on the Manon side, but I'll also be sprinkling on that TKO. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, man. Right off the bat, if you don't really subscribe to Maryna's little, fan website, you're missing out there. No, she's been out of competition, dealing with the elbow injury, looking to pick up, where she left off there on her 2-fight win streak. The first, she's back at, or up at flyweight, where she seems to like it a lot better there. She beat Sabina Mazo, who's a pretty talented striker. Maryna busts her up on the feet, and showed that she has the ground and pound in the wrestling. And then followed it up with a win over Mayra Brena Silva, who's a good fighter, man. The volume was incredible there. She worked well behind the jab, and again, she showed that she can throw in some takedowns to win on these scorecards. She's on the Ukraine national boxing team, so I don't think this girl is lost on the feet by no means against Fiorot. And she trains out of American Top Team. She's got a slew of great teammates down there to work with. She's coached very well, and she's been in the octagon with high-level girls in Calderwood, who's a #1 contender. Esparza, who, man, they better make the #1 contender and give the title to, or the next fight to. But it is, without a doubt, Manon Fiorot, one of the absolute best debuts of 2021 so far. And, not often do you see us lay money on a female inside the distance at flyweight. But, absolutely easy money that night there. And she ended as a minus 160 that night against Victoria Leonardo. And here she is at the minus 160 again against a much better competition here, so props to you if you got the minus 160, because that is easy money against Victoria Leonardo. And man, Manon is an absolute beast, like her nickname on the feet. 5 of her 6 wins come via TKO, so to get that at plus 350, plus 450 is a steal. She's a karate kickboxing champion. Dude, she's an absolute killer on the feet. She works well behind that side kick, and sneaks the head kicks in crazy nice. She hides them behind the hands super well. And he touched on the inactivity of Moroz, because Manon has been super active as of late, fighting a ton. And it's a tough one for me, because Moroz has been in there with the tougher people, but I do think Manon Fiorot has a super high ceiling, and the potential is through the roof for this girl. I just don't think she's been tested the same way, and I think it's really easy to look good against somebody like Victoria Leonardo. So if Manon, I think Manon has the potential to come out here and look like a minus 300, minus 350, and if she does that, I really hope to get a line similar to this going forward, because I think this is a big test that'll show me a lot for Manon, but it's a pass for me right now, man.
I don't hate it. Like I said, at the end of the day, we're talking about a girl fight, and one where we don't know much about them. Manon's fighting once a year, and Maryna's fighting once a year, and Manon's still somewhat new, hasn't really faced that competition. I want to go back to that Manon Fiorot athleticism. It kind of reminds me of like a more polished Hannah Goldie, where it's like, if she gets those fundamental tools added to her game, she's going to be a fucking problem. And as far as athletically gifted, and like you said, the ceiling that she has, I think that she's one of the better prospects to eventually give Valentina Shevchenko a run for her money.
The thing that I wanted to note is that side kick. It only takes, one to miss on a good fighter who has a little bit of wrestling to be able to wrap you up and take you down. And we've not seen Fiorot have to get up off her back a whole lot. I love her, man, but just, not a smart play, especially one if you, put it for the podcast.
Thinking Moroz might make her pay on some of those riskier strikes that she likes to throw.
For sure.
I could understand that, especially with Moroz's experience level.
Back to the men's lightweight division, where we see Alain Patrick, who's 15-3, taking on Mason the Dragon Jones, who's 10-1. Alain Patrick sitting at the pretty hefty underdog, plus 250. Mason Jones there, minus 300. you see that both these guys train out of pretty good camps, where Patrick's doing a lot of work at Sanford MMA, known for having a plethora of good talent, where Mason Jones, the same can be said. He's left Wells. He does a lot of his training camps at Team Alpha Male, and a good camp to prep him for what I see to be a lot of takedowns probably coming his way. I don't really think it has a lot to weigh in on the fight, but I think you can kind of see what the UFC wants here. You've got the veteran who is on a 2-fight skid, been super inactive over the last 3 years, taking on the young gun, who just made himself a name despite losing that debut. He's now an absolute massive favorite here. I think we're both on the Mason, Jones side here. What you think, man?
I think this is Mason Jones' fight to lose for sure. You look at Patrick, he's 37 years old, definitely past his prime. And like you said, when you go out there and get out grappled by the striker and Bobby Green, you've got problems. Because up until this point, everyone talked about the BJJ of Patrick like that's, his go-to path. But he's only got 2 subs in 18 fights. And I don't really know if you can justify him being like a super big BJJ threat. Along with that, Patrick doesn't really set up his takedowns. He'll kind of shoot for him with reckless abandon. And that's not something that I think that he's going to fix at this age, I understand that, he's got to start making some changes if he wants to get those wins, so I'm hoping that, him and his team are going to address that. But, man, looking over at Mason Jones, 11 years younger, also a BJJ black belt, mixes things up well. In his last fight with Mike Davis, he threw over 350 strikes. I mean, the dude doesn't quit. As far as having that grit and that pressure, he's Tony Ferguson at prime Tony Ferguson-esque with his pressure, and I think that that's something that's just going to eventually break Patrick here. We already played the under on this fight. The Mason inside the distance is the same price as the under 2.5. Yeah. And you only give up about 40 points if you decide to take the fight doesn't go the distance as opposed to the under 1.5. So we've already made a decent sized play, 2 units on the fight doesn't go the distance at -130. And man, I think that that's the perfect way to play this. Although this is Jones, I could say Mike Davis was probably a harder fight than Alon Patrick. Sure. But, this is another one where this is probably his next best level of competition. And I think that Dan Hardy really said it best, where Mason Jones is willing to take these risks. In the Cage Warriors, when he went up to fight at 170 pounds to win that belt, he does not mind taking these hard challenges. And Patrick is going to be a great stepping stone for him in the 155-pound division, which is filled with absolute killers. This is a great way for him to kind of make a name for himself.
Yeah, I expect Patrick to probably stick to what got him 5-1 in the UFC at one time, the wrestling roots there. But he's taken down guys like Stevie Ray, McDessie, Damir Hasdovich, people who are not known of having good takedown defense. And the longer it stays on the feet, the more he's playing with fire here. Mason Jones, who showed an immense amount of heart and durability. And I will say, I think Mason could be a little lucky here that he's not getting someone with big power who could maybe capitalize on that big, all the damage he took in Mike Davis' fight. I think it's a perfect fight for him, and love what I see, like you talked about, just the highest of pace, always in combination. He's confident in that firefight, and talked about the welterweight. I think it was Adam Proctor, he beats, who's like a 6'2" guy. He's a big dude, like you said, and man, he just showed me that he's hard to hold down. He's going to get right back to his feet immediately, and man, I like Mason Jones to come out here and finish this guy, but why not take doesn't go the distance to protect both sides in case Chris Weidman shit happens,
Yeah, I love it. I think we see 2 guys at completely different spots in their career. Mason has all the momentum going in the world, and then Alon Patrick, it's not like that Bobby Green fight was the first time that we've seen him on the downfall. He got out grappled by Scott Holtzman too, so this one, like you said, easy win for Mason Jones. I'm happy with how we played it. That Mason Jones inside the distance, I'll personally probably be playing that as well.
Absolutely, brother.
We move on to the welterweight division, where we see Francisco Trinaldo, who's 26-7, taking on the king of kung fu, Muslim Salikhov, who's 17-2. Trinaldo's finally deciding to move up in weight at the ripe age of 42. He's at least making some changes, like his camp, where he's moved to American Top Team for this fight. Right now it's kind of odd, but he's put together a decent win streak at his age. He's on a 3-fight win streak, arguably a 5-fight win streak. And, there's a couple of things that you can guarantee from a Trinaldo fight, and that's a lot of strength and some big bombs in the hands. where Muslim, you know, he's coming off of a couple of fights where he had to pull from it, one from undisclosed injuries and one from COVID-related injuries, or COVID-related symptoms, which I know that we're not huge fans of. He's put together a solid 4-fight win streak himself, but those last two kind of being closer than a lot of people would like. And I think that's why I see a lot of people taking a stab on Francisco Trinaldo here. What do you think?
Yeah, man, it's a close one here. You know, I think the whole world will agree he doesn't fight Alexander Hernandez in Texas. He gets the nod, and he puts himself on a 5-fight win streak here at 42. 16-6 in the UFC, man. Really impressive record. You've seen guys beating guys like Jim Miller and Paul Felder, you know, Bobby Green, who we just mentioned. And at 42 in that last, you know, fight, he showed the old man still has a little fight left in him, you know. He gets hurt badly in round 2, gets his back taken. He's fighting a young prospect in Jai Herbert who's way younger than him, you know, 6'1", 7-inch reach on him. And the veteran savviness gets him through the round, you know, gets off the stool round 3 and comes out and puts him away with a nasty left hook counter. And I don't know if you know, that's the one where, you know, Dan Hardy, I don't know, maybe lost his job because of it, yelling at Herb Dean like that. But, you know, the thing is, he missed weight badly in that fight, and it's always going to be that little asterisk there. And like you said, at the ripe age of 42, he finally is starting to move up, because at that age, man, and all the muscle he carries, those weight cuts have got to be, you know, just brutal on your body. What I do like about him is his ability to mix in, you know, the takedowns, and I like him to try to close that distance and drag Muslim to the fight here. Muslim's 4-fight win streak, you know, not only really just the last 2, man, but I don't really know what to make of it, because if you can't beat Ricky Rainey, you shouldn't be in the UFC. And you know, he did, obliterate Nordine Taleb, you know, but he's a little on the older side, and he had been finished in his previous 2 losses as well, so maybe more of, you know, just capitalizing on the opportunity there. With Star Poli, you know, weight issues moving up, you know, the loss to Tim Means, we aren't really seeing how that went aging too well. And then Zaleski dos Santos, you know, probably thought it then, watched it back for tape study this week. You know, Zaleski dos Santos probably should have got the nod in that fight there, you know, but, you know, nevertheless, we see Muslim on a 4-fight win streak here. He's the way more technical, diverse striker of the two. Man, you know, Trinaldo's as durable as it gets. He's never been finished. I would not be surprised if the technicality of Muslim slips through and does get the finish. He is the natural welterweight here, but I do think the money line on Muslim is a safe play if you do want to find somewhere to parlay that.
So here's like my small rebuttal is that I feel like if everybody was just looking at tape and didn't know that Trinaldo was 42 years old and they thought they were both 30 years old, that tit for tat, this should be lined a whole lot closer. And I think a lot of people are confusing, like, Muslim's not a spring chicken at 36 years old either, you know? Like, it's not like he has some huge edge in youth or anything. And like I said, I think that this fight's close enough for me to just want to lay off of it entirely and just kind of enjoy some violence.
I'm absolutely all right with it. In our first heavyweight fight of the night, we see Tanner the Bulldozer Boser, who's 19-7-1, taking on Ilir the Sledgehammer Latifi, who's 14-8. Tanner Boser there, you know, trains up there in Canada with one of the best middleweights in the world in KB Bueller. He's getting another veteran here, you know, after dropping the ball against Andrei Arlovsky. But, you know, you watch it back, and it is primarily just a lot of leg strikes. But Tanner might have should have gotten a nod that night. Now, Latifi, you know, he does train over there at All-Stars with maybe potentially the best middleweight in the world, and Hamzat Chimaev there, and guys like Alexander Gustafsson. And you even see him on his social media helping Francis a lot with his rematch with Stipe there. It's just at 37, already trying to move weight classes and stuff. He kind of needs a win badly with the way they kind of just purging heavyweights lately. I feel like if Tanner keeps this on the feet, it's his fight. But, man, you know, Latifi is known to be able to sneak that wrestling in and take it on the scorecards. How about you see this one? Yeah,
if the Tanner Boser versus Andrei Arlovsky fight didn't happen, I think Boser would have probably come in here as the minus 400, you know? But he definitely has slowed down as far as his the hype surrounding him. You know, he fell victim to the Arlovsky special, man. You know, just getting kind of caught in the deer in the headlights, mirroring your opponent. I know you touched on it. The judges gave a different winning round to Boser. Every judge had a different winning round. Tough one to call, but one that I'm not screaming robbery on, even though we were on the Boser side. Boser's just a good guy for the UFC. He's young, got the power mullet, Canadian, and missing a tooth. Just a quality, quality guy to kind of get behind. It's easy to root for him. And since that Gane loss, I think that he's made those adjustments to his games that he needed to. You know, since that loss, he's come into the low 230s, which has made him one of the lighter heavyweights in the division, but also one of the faster heavyweights in the division, similar to Chris Dawkins. Boser, you know, he's got quick hands, and I think that that'll ultimately be what wins him this fight against Latifi. Latifi's that Swedish wrestler, and honestly, looking down his record, his best win's probably that standing guillotine to OSP. I just don't think that that's a possibility with Boser here. You know, Latifi, similar to DC, likes to get in on those hips, use that low center of gravity, and kind of throw you around. But is going to have trouble keeping heavyweights like Tanner Boser on the ground. You know, he was lucky to get Derek Lewis, who has zero ground game at all and is willing to accept the back, and even then had trouble keeping him on the ground, and when it was on the feet, he was outclassed. He ate some hard shots from Derek Lewis, and a lot of, you know, heavyweights, much less ex-light heavyweights, wouldn't be able to take those type of shots. It's weird to say that Latifi, being an ex-light heavyweight, is going to come in with a 15-pound weight advantage, but that's what's happening here, you know? I think that that'll definitely work in his favor, but I've got to lean Tanner Boser here. I think that this is one of the easier bets of the night, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tanner Boser kind of shit the bed like the Arlovsky fight. You know, he's coming off of a loss, and I know he's got a lot to prove here. Latifi's the kind of guy that'll destroy a game plan completely by just grinding you out. So this is a super interesting one, and one that I'm probably going to lay off, but I'll definitely lean Boser here. Yeah,
man, you know, if that fight doesn't take place in Houston, Latifi might have taken that one against Derek Lewis, who... something to note there, though, is, you know, Derek Lewis might have the best get-up game in the UFC, though, you know? So if Tanner Boser were to get...
Raw get-up game.
So if Tanner Boser, you know, were to find himself on bottom, I don't think he gets up maybe as easy as Derek Lewis does, and he does throw a lot of those leg kicks, which we might see Ilir try to capitalize and counter to get the takedown. I lean Boser, but, you know, the more we break it down, I think it's simply something you probably should pass on, and Latifi could steal it with that wrestling.
Yeah, one last thing, and I keep on doing this, but Latifi comes super predictable. We saw in the Volkan Oezdemir fight, Oezdemir started lining up knees down the middle to the most predictable shots you could have possibly imagined. Boser's so much bigger that I think that he could really catch Latifi. Yeah, Boser knee up the middle, TKO. I'll call it now. We drop down to the women's flyweights, where we see Montana De La Rosa, who's 11-6-1, taking on the Queen of Violence, Ariane Lipski, who is 13-6. Montana De La Rosa spent most of her time at Team Elevation, or most of this camp at Team Elevation, which is probably one of the best camps you could be at as a young women contender right now. Pretty spotty record up until this point. Really, she's only beating those girls that she absolutely needs to stay in the UFC. I would say Montana's biggest thing that she has going for her is that she's still only 26 years old, and this will be her 10th fight under the UFC lights. And you know, I think a lot of people are justifying their bet on Montana De La Rosa off of things that they hope she's improved on. You know, Ariane Lipski, she's not very good, right? She's not very good. She's the Queen of Violence, but to who, man? You know, that loss to Antonina Shevchenko, where you get out grappled, it's probably the worst look you could possibly have. And I think that that's why the majority of the people that I've seen are helping move the line the way that it has. You know, Ariane Lipski started as a plus 120. You now see her at a plus 210. And training out of King's MMA, she's got some good girls like Bunny Ruiz, Sabina Mazu, Gabby Garcia to work with that could give her some good looks, and physically, stature-wise, some good girls to try and, you know, fix those grappling holes that Ariane Lipski has had in her past. You know, she can get taken down real easily, but she's able to kind of pull some shit out of her ass with those women's submissions.
Knee bar.
Yes.
For me, man, you're right with Montana De La Rosa. In Colorado, it's a plethora of girls to train with there, and her style of fighting with the wrestling she brings, excellent to be at Elevation, you know, to be able to train for that there. And I feel like she's been in there, you know, with a lot of the division's good girls. She's coming off a loss to Vivian Araujo and then the draw with Mayra Buena Silva. You can't think she's scared of anything that Ariane Lipski is going to be throwing at her here. And I think the public sees that stylistically, this is just a bad fight for Ariane Lipski. When Antonina Shevchenko can maul you on the mat, Montana De La Rosa, I feel like could have an absolute field day with the wrestling. Now at minus 260, a little bit unplayable. I know I have a minus 182 price tag that I like a whole lot better on that, but at this point, a huge women's favorite is something that I completely stay away from. With Lipski there, on the feet though, she sticks to the name Queen of Violence. She'll walk you down. She'll let her hands go in that Muay Thai stance, but I think she's probably trying to use the clinch a little bit. If she can land a shot, you've seen Montana's nose kind of get busted up and cause her some issues in her career. It makes a fight a lot more interesting here. But man, I just keep going back to the way Antonina handled that here, and the way that you've seen Isabella de Padua, hold Ariane Lipski on the mat for 2 rounds and kind of lose the decision I thought she should have had. Man, again, I think it's a wrestling field day for Montana De La Rosa. Don't want to spend too much time on it. Probably takes it by decision, but if she finds the finish inside the distance, honestly, it wouldn't shock me too much.
I'm right there with you, but you're in agreement. Probably too chalky to play right now.
Absolutely.
Moving on to our prelim main event in the featherweight division, where we see Mr. Finland, Makwan Amirkhani, who's 16-5, taking on the Jawaian Kamuela Kirk, who's 11-4. Makwan Amirkhani made the switch to his own personal gym, which I love so much. Looking over his record, he's kind of cemented himself as that gatekeeper,
the number 15
man. Yeah, the number 15, and I think he'll probably stay there, man. He beats up on those guys he's supposed to and really loses every time that you've seen him take those steps up in competition. I'll definitely give him this. He's a tough son of a bitch, and his ground game is slick as could be, and one that even gave Barbosa, some troubles here and there. Kamuela Kirk, he's getting his debut on short notice, stepping in for Nate Landwehr. 2-2 in his last 4 bouts, which really makes you wonder if he's ready for the UFC step. He's got 100% finish rate, so you can bet that this one's not seeing the judges. And he's training out of Siege MMA, where I'm pretty sure his dad's the head coach, which can be good and bad, With the tape that I saw from Kirk, fun guy to watch, but I do think he is way in over his head, and I'm kind of looking at Makwan Amirkhani inside the distance. How are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, man, I'm definitely on the Amirkhani side. He's supposed to be taking on our boy Nate Landwehr here, which would have been a hell of a fight there as well. But coming off the fight with Edson Barboza, it was more of like Barboza should have beat Dan Ige and wasn't gifted the decision there. So it's like, they found someone that they thought Edson Barboza could beat. And, he was much better on the feet, dropped Makwan twice. But come round 3, man, usually Makwan had them cardio issues, but you saw him find the takedown and spend the whole round on top of Edson. And he's been in the cage with Shane Burgos and Arnold Allen, who are top 15 featherweights, and you see him submit Fishgold and Dana Henry super easily, who are guys that usually rely on their grappling to get, to have success in their fights. Looks to back you up against the cage to kind of get that takedown. You don't see Amirkhani shooting singles and doubles out in space, but on the feet, extremely too patient. The guy his volume's non-existent. He's not going to be leading any exchanges. We're on the side of Kamuela Kirk. That guy's going to be leading almost every single one of the exchanges, man. He really embraces that Hawaiian style. He really likes to walk you down and let the right hand fly. Maybe 2-2 in his last 4, but he is 2-0 in 2021, and he just fought last month, but just like 2 or 3 weeks ago back in May. So it seems to kind of hit his groove here. He loves to chop you down with that calf kick, but Makwan being a southpaw, he's not going to have the lead leg there, and it takes a big weapon away from Kamuela Kirk there. And I just see him kind of overextending on some stuff, and I see Makwan getting this fight to the ground. I see him, locking up a submission, maybe the anaconda, and Makwan inside the distance is probably the play on this fight.
Keep an eye out for that one.
Kicking off our main card, we see Tom Breese, who's 12-3, taking on Antonio Arroyo, who is 9-4. Tom Breese, English fighter, who I kind of openly rag about, for not having any kind of wrestling game to him, but it's a pretty common theme amongst a lot of English fighters. They're just kind of late to pick up the wrestling skill, and you kind of saw their wrestling god and Mike Grundy have a lot of bad success and no success against Lando there. And with Antonio Arroyo, we've seen him train over here at Jackson Wink in Albuquerque. Can only hope that elevation and stuff can help this guy's gas tank. Both of these guys have phenomenal size for the division, but I have no problem saying either one of these are ever going to be elite in the division. They're both coming off embarrassing losses where they're at a massive size, reach advantage, and they're upset badly by, pretty significant underdogs there. They're both probably happy that they don't have the wrestling aspect coming back their way here, and man, I think the line is wide. I think Antonio Arroyo has potential to make this a lot closer than the plus 205 that he's currently sitting at.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you. I actually came out of this capping this fight for Arroyo at plus 135. We're getting a ton of value sitting at plus 2-1 dog odds. Breese, very tall fighter. Like you said, 6'3", and is more than happy to stand up. What I think is kind of interesting is that he has 7 of his 11 wins, or 7 of his 12 wins are by submission, which is not something that you'd see in somebody who, in theory, is a primary striker. It's like he's got a very slick grappling game, but never really initiates the grappling. It's only when it's forced upon him. Like you said, this is a fight where I think both of the guys are more than happy to stand up here. Arroyo, really, really disappointing since entering the UFC. He came in, had that Luke Rockhold body. Everybody thought that he was going to be a fucking problem. And then he goes 0-2 against Muniz and Duran Win. That's a 5'6", 185er that's taking you down over and over and over again.
Fighting at 195.
Oh, man. Yeah, thank you. So, man, that makes me not want to bet Arroyo, as I'm saying. But you're right, man. It's like that's some obvious holes in your game that I don't know how you got to the UFC with those. I do think that he's finally going to get to showcase his kick-heavy game, which he really relies on. But I'm worried that he might throw some stupid, spinning back kicks like he did against Wynn that wound himself up on the ground. And I do think that Breese will have the grappling edge here, I think that, depending on how it starts out on the feet, if Breese does find himself to have the striking edge, it's going to be an absolutely long night for Arroyo, and one that from what I can tell, he's not going to be able to make mid-fight adjustments to correct. As I am talking about it, man, I truly think that Breese is probably the side, and that I'll probably just lay off this fight.
And to play devil's advocate, though, Breese has only beaten KB Bueller and 40-year-old Dan Kelly, so it's not like he's out here beating guys that I'd even say are better than Antonio Arroyo.
And that's fair. I mean, you ask KB, he's got the best jab in the game, but you're right. It's not like Breese has necessarily proven himself to be this, upper echelon fighter. I love that he's willing to sit down on his strikes and deliver a straight left from hell. And one where if Arroyo does start to get tired in those later rounds, I could see him start to catch him with. Like I said, I'm okay with laying off this fight. I think Arroyo's kind of getting disrespected here, but the more I've talked about it, the more I'm kind of okay where the line's sitting right now.
Yeah, the reason, so I capped Breese as the favorite. The reason you'll never see me bet Breese in any situation is this guy, he lacks the mental confidence, in my opinion, to be a fighter. And he's openly talked about it all the time. You see this guy broken really easily with the wrestling. He's just not a guy that fights for your money. So I can come out with him, probably against KB Bueller again, and I'm not betting Tom Breese.
All right.
Moving on through the main card, we stop in the middleweight division where we see Dusko Thunder Todorovic, who's 10-1, taking on Gregory Robocop Rodriguez, who's 9-3. Dusko's a Serbian fighter there, training out of secular MMA in Europe. You talk about Rodriguez there, training down in Brazil. With Dusko, he's 10-1. He's trying to bounce back from that first professional loss of his career. He's still a very highly talented young middleweight prospect that I think a lot of people have high hopes for, and hopefully he learned a lot from that first loss. He's taken on the newcomer here with Rodriguez, who honestly has found his groove lately. The guy's been on fire, won 8 of his last 9, including one just back on the 21st of May, so I think it's going to be 2 weeks from fight night. My only concern there, he's a big boy. I wonder about the weight cut back down to 85, but, consistency is key and stuff, and when guys are feeling themselves and when they're on fire, they're hard to beat. This line is creeping closer and closer and closer from where it opened at, man, and I think Gregory has a possibility of being a live dog here, man. How do you see this one?
I think I'm right there with you, man. Gregory's actually one of the dogs that I came out of tape study wanting to bet myself. Dusko, man, that Punahale fight, it was tough to watch.
Yeah.
One thing that I kind of noted was it didn't seem like Dusko had a sense of urgency at all. It was like he was in a sparring match when he was there. And, you know, I think that maybe you can accredit that to him being so comfortable on the feet, but that's not something that you can get away with in the UFC, you know?
Unless you're Wonder Boy.
Yeah, unless you're Wonder Boy. And even Wonder Boy, he gets tagged by Woodley, you know? Like,
Pettis.
right. Dusko's best win is probably Michel Pereira, who has, like, the same problems that Dusko has in keeping his hands low and being, you know, an idiot when it comes to striking. I don't feel like Dusko has the fight IQ to conserve energy when he's fighting, and that's why I think a lot of people like yourself are on this fight doesn't go the distance. Gregory, 3-0 in LFA, 29 years old, looks like he's 40 years old in the face, but he has a lot of really good things that I like seeing in his tape study. You know, he's a BJJ champion. He angles off when he throws that right hand, and he throws with some power. Yeah. I know he trains with some high-level Brazilians and Lyoto Machida and Jacare Souza. And I think that he has more than enough chance here against Dusko Todorovic. You know, in that Jordan Williams Contender Series bout that Gregor had, he hit Jordan Williams with some hard-ass shots that I don't think a lot of people could have taken, and I don't think Dusko could take. In Dusko's fight with Punahale, it was like he didn't react to the punches how I would want a high-level UFC fighter to react. Start putting your hands up if you get tagged. Shoot for a takedown. Do anything but just lean back more and get tagged with the same thing over and over again. For me, I like taking a stab on Gregory here, and I also would prefer to play the under 1.5 sitting at plus money right now, as opposed to taking the fight doesn't go to decision, just because I think after that, you know, first 1.5 rounds, it's going to turn into a shit show where neither guy has the cardio to really do any damage to finish the fight after that mid-second round.
Yeah, man. I'm kind of tricky on the under 1.5 because it's still sitting there at plus money, which is super tempting here. You know, with Todorovic, it's so technical on the feet at the same time. He flows so well. He'll switch stances, and I think he'll have success maybe beating up the lead leg of Gregory, who sits real heavy in that stance. But it is some of the worst striking defense that I've ever seen. You know. And just at the end of January, Punahale put him down like 6 times before Herb Dean called it. You know, it's a lot of damage to take.
With the same punch.
You're right. And, man, it's hard for me to ever back someone who literally has, you know, no striking defense. But on the same side of Gregory Rodriguez, he's not as defensively sound as I like fighters to be as well. I'm very confident there's a finish in this fight. I have parlayed it. Don't get me wrong, with either Muslim Salikhov or Leon Edwards against Nate Diaz, I can't really remember, but I'm super confident we see a finish here. Just kind of, you know, torn as to when it's going to be.
Yeah. We move to the welterweight division where we see the Argentine dagger Santiago Ponzinibbio, who's 27-4, taking on Caramel Thunder Miguel Baeza, who's 10-0. Santiago is training out of American Top Team. And, you know, he put together a solid win streak before taking that big layoff and then showing up against Li Jingliang and kind of looking like a shell of himself. You know, this fight, I think the biggest thing that he needs to work on is not having any of that ring rust. He definitely needs to try and get started early and kind of set the pace early. Selfishly, I want Santiago Ponzinibbio to win. I got a pretty valuable autographed signature card of him. So I would like to see him get this done, although I do think he kind of fits into that category as one of those guys who had joined the commentary scene, and you kind of wonder where his head is at right now. Where Miguel Baeza, I'll give it to old Caramel Thunder. He's put together a decent win streak right here, but he's lucky with the guys that he's gotten up until this point. And Ponzinibbio's definitely by a long shot his hardest test to date. He's coming out of MMA Masters in Miami with Colby Covington and Cesar Ferreira. I think those are definitely some really good guys to give him looks here, especially against a guy like Ponzinibbio. Personally, I tried fading Baeza in his last fight. You'll probably see me do it again here. How do you feel?
Man, I'm all over Miguel Baeza here. I think he's one of the division's brightest prospects here. But with Ponzinibbio, you know, I hate to highlight such a negative aspect of, you know, someone's life and career, but to be told by the doctors you might not fight again, to have the blood-bone infection that he did, maybe it's the ring rust, but it was kind of evident to me that it had taken a toll on him. He showed up, you know, a lot less muscular. He looked, you know, far weaker, I guess, a mean way to put it, far weaker than he did his first time around, and tried to come back in January, and he got his lights shut out by Jing Lang, and he left a chin up in the air, and again, just in January, I don't really like a guy 4.5 months later turning around, taking another fight, but I understand his eagerness to get back in there. I like Ponzinibbio on the feet, though. He's got the best jab in the game. He sets everything up really well off of it. You see him finish both Gunnar Nelson and Neil Magny with it. And he's always walking forward, slinging, heat at you. This is an orthodox versus orthodox fighter. Miguel Baeza makes a living off that calf kick, and I think that's something he's going to have huge success with here. You saw him we saw it live in Tampa, and finish Hector Aldana in his debut with leg kicks, and then he gets a big veteran name in Matt Brown there, and we actually kind of got to see him overcome some adversity and stuff, which you like to see out of a young fighter. He kind of got his knees buckled, kept his wits together, tore up the lead leg, and made Matt desperate to close distance and put him away with a good counter left hook. And that Takashi Sato, you got to see that he's more of a striker, that he does have some ground game to him when he goes out there and, submits Takashi Sato. He has some of the best, lead foot positioning that I see on guys. You see Dominic Cruz talk about it all the time when he's commentating fights. Miguel Baez is excellent at winning that position with his lead foot, and it sets up the right hand so well. I don't like the striking tendency I see from Ponzinibbio, and again, I hate to bring it up, but I don't know if he's the same Ponzinibbio we saw a couple years ago. And Miguel Baez, I really like what I see from this guy. I'm going to go with Miguel to maybe put Ponzinibbio away, but at a -125, I don't mind playing him straight.
It's kind of weird that Ponzinibbio's possible biggest advantage in here is coming in with the experience edge, but how can you even factor that in when he is coming off of a loss and he is coming off of all those injuries? I think Miguel Baeza might actually be the more comfortable guy inside the octagon come Saturday, and that solid high guard defense of Baeza is probably something that'll give Ponzinibbio trouble with trying to land that big overhand right that we see him rely on in a lot of his previous fights. The more I talk about it, the less I'm probably going to bet Ponzinibbio, but I'm still rooting for him.
And it's kind of like the Manon Fiorot, Miguel Baeza. It's his first real big test of his career. I don't fault anybody for laying off here. It's a good test for him to see where he's at only 10-0.
Yeah.
We're in the middleweight division again, where we see Roman Dolidze, who's 8-1, taking on Loreno Staropoli, who's 9-3. Roman Dolidze spends a lot of time in Vegas with the UFC PI and Extreme Co-Tour there, and it was basically like his gym partners say and coach. It was a plan for this guy to drop down to middleweight. It just wasn't something that he did off a whim. He's 2-0 in the UFC at light heavyweight before he drops down here, but he was unsuccessful in that debut at middleweight there to Trevin Giles. No robbery by no means. I think Dolidze won. I think Trevin Giles think Dolidze won. But on the side of Staropoli now, he's riding the 2-fight losing streak, and he's missed weight in his last one. Now having to come up to middleweight, it's basically turns into a next light heavyweight versus a next welterweight, man. And we released a straight bet on Roman already. I think we see this one the exact same way.
Yeah, man. Roman is the play here, and easily my biggest lean of the card. We also like the Roman inside the distance.
Yeah.
You touched on Roman dropping down from light heavyweight. Looked perfect in his first cut to 185. Hit the championship level or championship weight.
Yep.
Then Staropoli, man, you look at his record, 2-2 in the UFC, and his 2 wins are not good, man. It's Thiago Alves, who's now in bare knuckle, and Hector Aldana, who's on a 4-fight losing streak right now.
He couldn't finish.
Yeah, who he couldn't finish. And then you go to Tim Means, who was able to control Staropoli up against the cage for extended amounts of time. Now you just get a bigger grappler in Roman here. I mean, I'm not saying that Roman has shown us the best cardio or even the best grappling credentials. I get that his ADC grappling championships are the Asian and the Oceanic one, but he's facing a purple belt here in Staropoli, man. I feel like we're about to see him ragdoll Staropoli here. And even on the feet, I think that he could find success, at least for the amount of time that he's not breathing out of his mouth. I think that he'll have success on the feet. He kind of throws that huge Dan Henderson overhand, which he can follow up with a takedown. And that's where Staropoli's going to have those problems. Staropoli also although he wants to keep it on the feet, he's not the smartest with what he throws. You know, we see a lot of spinning heel kicks, a lot of those flashy style strikes that I think is going to cost him. You know, we've seen people pay for those spinning attacks against grapplers. I think that we're going to see exactly that against Elite. It just sucks for Starpoli, man. He went up a division and drew a grappler. I think it's going to be a long night.
Drew a light heavyweight grappler attached, you know. And not only do we see the grappling edge that Roman has, you know, we both took this specific point away from, you know, when you see Roman dust Ibragimov with that left high kick, and then you go watch Starpoli almost, you know, get finished with it, get set down with the same left high kick from Tim Means. You know, Roman sets that up really well, man. I know both of us took note from that from tape study, and we could actually see him getting it done that way. You know, as he's dropped down, I feel like he kind of has the speed still of the light heavyweights. He's still a little bit slow here, but, man, like you said, he's going to be able to take this guy down. He's able to mix up his game way more than Starpoli, and you brought up the spinning techniques that I have written down as well. I think that Roman's just going to be able to counter one of those, man, and just put him on his back. Yeah, man, I'm super confident in Roman Dolidze. I'm glad we released a play early. I'm hoping the line continues and it looks good come Saturday.
Yeah, not to mention that inside the distance prop for 185ers here. If you're on the Roman Dolidze sign, you can take him from a minus 130 to a plus 260 inside the distance. I really think that's the spot here. One that we might look to play on Saturday.
And I mean, even the under 2.5 is plus money, and I know you love to play that at middleweights too.
Yeah, don't tempt me with a good time. In our co-main event of the evening, we are in the heavyweight division where we see the big ticket Walt Harris, who's 13-9, taking on Marcin Tybura, who is 21-6. Walt Harris spent most of his time at Extreme Couture with Eric Nixick. And, you know, you kind of take a look down his record, and it's really tough not to condense it down to a first-rounder bust, which ultimately is what I have done. And, you know, I know, it's awful hearing about what happened to his daughter, and I was really, really hoping that in his return he would have patched up those holes in his cardio. But they still seem to be there. You know, he's a fast starter with really good boxing, but it seems like anytime he's forced to do anything other than striking, that cardio takes a huge hit. Where Marcin Tybura getting most of his work in at Ankos MMA in Las Vegas, and he's coming in on a 4-fight win streak against pretty legit talent. And I said this before his last fight with Hardy, and I'll say it again. He has stopped caring about having exciting fights and is much more concerned with just getting that W. And, if he can endure that first-round punishment from Harris, I think that this is all Tybura. He's one of those fighters that embraces that grind. And other than the slight chin issues he's shown in the past, which I think that he's addressed with this new game plan of his, I think that this is Marcin Tybura's fight to lose. How about you?
I'm on the side with Walt Harris and the underdog, man, but it's a very fun fight. You got the number 8 and the number 11 guy here, you know, big implications on moving forward. Walt, he is already 37 years old, man, though, and, I seem to say it a lot recently. You can't go on a losing streak at 37 at heavyweight, and, you bring up that tragedy for me. I think that makes the training camps far less than adequate and everything in my opinion here, and I think you saw that in his. He almost finished Alistair in round 1. Arguably could have called that, and he just had nothing left come round 2 there. And, with Volkov as well, Volkov just tore up the body with front kicks and stuff. Both very technical strikers, maybe 2 of the best in the division, and far better striker than Tybura. But prior to that tragedy, Walt's on a 4-fight winning streak and looking, the best in his career. So I think that tragedy, man, has really put a stamper on his career here, but he is extremely athletic. I think he's going to have a massive speed advantage, especially here in the hands, and he's always cutting off the cage and throwing in combination. With Tybura, he went on a little bit of a losing streak a couple years ago and kind of had a fire lit underneath his ass last year. 4-0 in 2020, one of the most active fighters on the roster. He's got the longest win streak in the heavyweight division outside of the champ and Francis Ngannou. And, he talked about it. It's a win over the young prospect Sergey Spivak, who's kind of looked impressive lately. You do got to note that Walt dusted him a little bit quicker, though. You made it. And then, a light heavyweight in Maxim Griffin, a 40-year-old Rothwell. The best one, in my opinion, it is the Greg Hardy one. Greg Hardy, maybe not all that experienced, but a great prospect. He was able to withstand the barrage early. draw him late in the round and find the finish. And I think that's what he's ultimately going to have to do. The same here. Maybe look to wrestle early and often to zap at that cardio of Walt. I really like Walt. The fact that you can give me his TKO at plus 260 or him first round TKO at plus 650. I mean, it's the perfect spot to hedge any kind of bet on Tybura. But man, I think if you wait after that first round and Tybura is still around, I feel like you get him at plus money there too.
I think that's probably the best spot, man. I mean, seriously, that after first round prop, you've hit a nail on the head. That's where the value on Marcin Tybura is going to come in. And those live odds are definitely something in a sport like MMA that they have not yet figured out how to cap it, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially, and we'll talk about that in the main event next.
Exactly.
The main event of the evening, we see the number 6 Jairzinho Biggie Boy Rozenstruik, who's 11-2, taking on the number 9 Augusto Sakai, who's 15-2-1. Man, Jairzinho, works out of American Top Team, a slew of heavyweights there for you to work with. Probably one of the best places you can get to work in as a heavyweight nowadays. Both of them are coming off, main event losses here and trying to rebound. Before that, though, besides Francis, Rozenstruik pretty much stormed the division, knocked down, putting away everybody in his path. Where Sakai, man, having a ton of success early against Alistair, got up to like a minus 400 live betting, which I know you took huge advantage of there. But the cardio failed him late here, man. The way I see this, man, I think it's another one of Jairzinho's boring fights here. I think Sakai just kind of doubles him up on strikes. It probably hits the scorecards. I know we see it different. I know that's why the hat's on the line for the main event next weekend.
Yes, sir, it is. It's interesting enough. You say that the over is going to hit, and I think it's currently sitting at over 2.5, which is something that we haven't talked about. But I'm with you, man. This is going to be one of those maybe stand and stare, boring heavyweight fights. I could definitely see that. Jairzinho, coming off his loss to Gain, I'm sure that he noticed those output issues in that fight. But something that I don't think people are taking into consideration is the length and athleticism of Gan, where it's the exact opposite of Augusto Sakai. Augusto Sakai is a fatty who's flat-footed and will more than happily walk into the counters of Jairzinho. Rozenstruik, he's a 245-pound heavyweight, where you see Sakai, he's that bigger heavyweight. Right. He's that 260, 265-pound heavyweight. And I see a lot of people on the Sakai side because of the possibility of him getting a takedown. And that's something that I kind of want to put to rest, is I don't think Sakai has any grappling offense, He's had one takedown in his entire UFC career, and that was off of a knockdown with Chase Sherman. And I think that we're just as likely to see Rozenstruik go for a takedown as we are Sakai.
And he held the fence to stop Blago away from taking him down.
Exactly. He's a Brazilian, so he will cheat. There is no doubt about that. He's been training Muay Thai since he was 14 years old. I think Jairzinho is the more polished striker, though. He has that deadly lead left hook that he's put to sleep a lot of people. And in all fairness, he had a really, really fast way up to the UFC. He got his first main event slot against Alistair Overeem after 3 fights and 6 minutes and 30 seconds total of octagon time. That being said, I was actually impressed with his ability to maintain his power throughout 5 rounds. We saw in the Augusto Sakai fight, he slowed down after the 3rd round, which was the first time he entered those championship rounds, where we've at least seen Rozenstruik, although he was losing that Alistair Overeem fight, he did end up carrying that power into the 5th round and getting that last second knockout, which is something that I like to see. Sakai is so tough, though.
Yeah.
I mean, after watching the Overeem elbows that he took, he didn't go out, man. I mean, that was the grace of, I think it was Herb Dean that stopped it.
Thank God Chris Taglioni wasn't there that night.
Yes, exactly, or Sakai would have been dead. But I mean, man, Sakai, he proved that he's as tough as anybody. So I could see this, one, like you said, going over the where it's set at, and 2, reaching the judges' scorecard. Obviously, Rozenstruik does have those output problems, but I think that it's he's got an opponent in Sakai that is more than willing to just walk into his counters, and it'll be a stick and move kind of night. He might drop Sakai, but I'm on Rozenstruik here, and I'm happy that we're getting to put the casual cap on the line.
Yeah, man. For me, it's that Sakai has never shown any type of chin issues. And Biggie Boy kind of gets that, death touch, rep from knocking out Overeem, Junior Dos Santos, and Andre Arlovsky. Guys who, are kind of known for not having chin later on in their career. 2 of them already cut by the UFC, and one, somehow by the grace of God, has found himself on a win streak at 43 and not cut yet.
And you forgot to mention Pretty Boy Crowder, okay? But
I mean, jab knocks him down. So you're right, unreal power here, man. But I think Sakai puts the guy up on the fence, the kind of the way he did Overeem a little bit, lets the knees in the clinch, the dirty boxing go. But yeah, man, I think it's actually aligned at 1.5, and I think that hits without an ease or with ease going over.
And I know that it's getting steam because I've seen a lot of people on it. I'm looking at it right now, and the over 1.5 is
minus 200.
Minus 200. Yeah. So, that over 2.5, I know it's heavyweights.
Almost even money.
Yeah, I know it's heavyweights, but we both see it hitting. Yeah. It might be worth taking a stab at, but maybe the casual cap's enough to be put on the line for this fight.
For sure, man. That's 14 fights we got on our return to the UFC this week. A bunch of heavyweight fights, both in the main event and co-main event. That wraps up all the breakdowns, but as always, man, what's the fight everybody needs to pay attention to?
My fight to pay attention to, it's a second fight on the card. It's Sean Woodson versus Youssef Zalal. I think that is a sleeper fight and one that doesn't really fit where it is on the card. What about yourself?
I couldn't agree more, man. Definitely should be up in the card. For me, it's going to be Miguel Baeza and Ponzinibbio. I think that's going to be a really, really good fight, man. And you got a really good veteran who needs to prove himself and a contender who's looking to keep the momentum going and prove himself again. For me, Mason Jones is that fighter guys need to keep their eye on. He had an outstanding debut even though he loses that fight. And now he gets a guy who, man, I think is easily breakable, and I think Mason Jones is primed for a nice finish on Saturday.
I'm with you, but I'm glad we took that fight. Doesn't go the distance. I'm going to have to go with the Ponzinibbio one, man. You're 100% right. He has got a lot to prove, and at 34 years old, he better make something happen if he wants to keep his name up in that upper echelon of the division.
What about a play at plus money?
Play at plus money, it's got to be that Gregory Rodriguez play. I think that he's more than capable of getting the upset here. But I know that you're on the co-main event for yours.
For sure, man. To get Walt Harris TKO at plus money, period, I think is a still plus 260. It's a must play in the heavyweight division. Plus 650 first round TKO. I just want to throw out there as well.
That's crazy.
It's a perfect way to hedge any type of bet if you're on the Tybura side. Best bet for me going to be what we already released out to the public for a 2-unit play in Roman Dolidze. Might even take a stab with him inside the distance there. We think he's one of our best plays this week.
Yeah, I'm going to say our best play is something that you actually brought up. It was the Marcin Tybura after round 1. Man, 100% right. That is the play to make, and Walt Harris is going to have that fast start, so you might not even have to wait until the round's over, but as soon as you see Walt Harris go into favorite odds, I'd start hammering that Marcin Tybura line as long as he's still conscious.
Yeah, throughout the past couple cards that I've looked through and think about, it's one of the best live betting opportunities that I can think of.
Love it.
That concludes our breakdown, man, of all 14 fights. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hop in the comment section and let us know who you guys got in the co-main and main events since we're split. Appreciate you guys watching as always.
Peace.